Test, test, test.
Just give me the all clear when you're ready to go. Are you ready to go, Amanda? You're all set? Everybody ready to go? Okay, well, I'd like to call the meeting to order here for the Special Environment Committee meeting, Monday, November 20th. Excuse me, it's approximately 2:30 p.m. here at downtown Wishart City Hall. I'd just like to acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lewingan speaking people. And we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and the Cosetzum nations. This has got the options for public participation listed first. Is that just by way of instruction, or do I do that first? We got to do the approval of the agenda and so on first, right? Okay, I see it's down here as number 4. It was just this piece in here.
Oh, no, that's just
Instruction. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so call to order done. Approval of the agenda of the meeting. Recommendation of the agenda of Special Environment Committee meeting on November 20, 2023 be adopted as presented. Yep. All those in favor? Yes, I made the motion. Opposed? It's passed. Unanimous. Adoption of minutes from the Environment Committee meetings, minutes of October 16, 2023. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Environment Committee October 16, 2023 be adopted as presented. Any questions, discussions? All those in favor? Unanimous. That's passed. It come to excuse me, public participation. So I think we have a couple of people in the audience that are interested in presenting. Just do the preamble, is that right? Would you like to do that now? Yeah, so we have a letter printed for us, folks, from Scenic, and the folks here, if you can just identify yourself and give me your address, and then please, you've got a couple of minutes. You push the little button on your machine there, you got it.
All right, thank you. My name is Stephen Doyle. I live at Unit 108, 644 Grand Rose Terrace. I'm here to speak on behalf of Scenic. Carol Brown asked me to come today and read to you the letter that has been entered into the record. So that's what I'm going to do. Thank you. To the Colwood Environment Advisory Committee. In February of 2023, municipalities were given a powerful tool from the province to help fight climate change. They were given the ability to regulate their building codes so that new construction would meet, so that new construction would meet a zero carbon step code, or ZCSC. Or prior to February 2023, Colwood was progressive in its building step code, but did not have the sanctions from the province to move further and faster on climate change to the extent of the zero carbon step code. On the Lower Island, 4 municipalities have already taken advantage of the ZCSC and have in effect eliminated the burning of fossil fuels in all new builds. These municipalities are the City of Victoria, the District of Saanich, the Town of View Royal Esquamit, and the City of Nanaimo. Metchosin is moving towards such a change as well. On the mainland, the District of North Vancouver, the City of North Vancouver, the District of West Vancouver, Whistler, and Nelson have made the changes to ZCSC, and other mainland municipalities are making moves towards adopting this as well. The early adoption by some municipalities shortly after February was quite impressive. We are asking for Colwood Council to direct staff to expedite the adoption of the zero carbon step code for Part 9 and Part 3 buildings at Step 4, which is zero carbon performance, for all new builds on the following schedule. All Part 9 residential buildings by November 1st, 2023. All Part 3 buildings, which is multi-unit residential buildings 6 stories or fewer by July 1st, 2024. Multi-unit residential buildings 7 or more stories by November 1st, 2024. All other eligible Part 3 buildings by November 1st, 2024. Should I just keep going just to keep finishing? We are very much encouraged to hear that the council meeting on August 28th, Councillor Ward state in the discussion on climate change that, quote, at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. We were also encouraged to hear Councillor Day say in regards to Colwood City's response to climate change that, quote, we need to move as aggressively as feasibly possible. We also appreciate the efforts of Councillor Grove to ask that we speed up Colwood's timeline to reach the important goals of the Colwood Climate Action Plan. The comments and sentiments expressed by other councillors speak volumes as to the commitments to moving Colwood forward in our efforts to deal with this important issue. With a sense of urgency, we wish to encourage the importance of taking action on climate change and not just the endorsement of the concept of climate change. We need to take steps now as we are all becoming aware of the extent of the devastation happening much sooner than expected. The Colwood Connection on Thursday reminded our citizens that, quote, by urgently reducing emissions, we can reduce future and irreversible impacts. Let's not just say and print these words, but let us be truly make the necessary moves. We have only to look at our children and our grandchildren to see how important that this is. Business as usual or delaying is not an option. Builders will adjust, and they may thank us one day for making codes unified throughout the region. CNIC asks you to move forward and consider making a motion and endorsing the adoption of the zero carbon step code by the City of Colwood as soon as possible. Thank you, and thank you for the extra time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else interested in participating? I guess I don't see anyone else here. So anyone online? I guess not. I will point out Devin is online with us today electronically. So anybody sees his hand up, hi Devin. Please don't feel free to poke me and let me remind me to keep him involved in the meeting. I guess we can move on then to new business 5.1. We have Byron Grant here today, Manager of Building and Bylaw Services. Thank you, Byron. Look forward to your presentation.
Good evening, Environment Committee, or afternoon rather. We have met before briefly. As the chair introduced, I'm Byron Grant, Manager of Building and Bylaw here in Colwood. So yeah, we're here today to discuss the impacts of a change to the zero carbon step code, how retrofits and existing buildings are affected, and we'll touch on renewable natural gas. It was mentioned earlier that there are no options or recommendations contained in the briefing, and I appreciate that being brought to our attention. We are certainly seeking the committee's thoughts on this item and welcome any comments or recommendations from this group that we can bring to our council. This is not the most simple item to go through, and we will be as concise as possible. If some of the language is a little too technical, or if you have any questions at the end, we'd be happy to pop back a slide. So what is the zero carbon step code? So the zero carbon step code is a provincial BC building code standard that local governments can choose to implement in their jurisdiction that started May 1st of this year. The zero carbon step code sets a maximum annual amount of greenhouse gas emissions that each new building is allowed to emit. The energy step code and the zero carbon step code sound similar and are related, but are not the same thing. The BC Energy Step Code is a provincial standard that sets out energy efficiency requirements for new buildings, while the BC Zero Carbon Step Code sets greenhouse gas emissions limits for new buildings. So the provincial timeline for implementation of the Energy Step Code and Zero Carbon Step Code are shown up there. This past summer, Energy Step Code became mandatory across the province, and houses now have to meet Step 3. While the dates are not finalized yet, the province has the same plan for implementation of the Zero Carbon Step Code. The targets and timelines are illustrated on the slide for reducing carbon emissions in buildings. So by 2024, even buildings may be provincially required to meet medium carbon emissions, which means you are decarbonizing space heat. By 2027, buildings may need to meet low carbon emissions, which means decarbonizing both space heat and hot water. And in 2030, zero carbon, which means that buildings are fully decarbonized. Similar to the Energy Step Code, governments now have the opportunity to accelerate these requirements sooner if they choose to through the Zero Carbon Step Code. So where is Colwood at now? For new houses in Colwood, the builder currently has an option to go with Step 3 with what's referred to as a low carbon energy system, or Step 5 of the Energy Step Code. A low carbon energy system as defined in our building bylaw is about the same as emissions level 3 of the Zero Carbon Step Code. The table shown on the left side of the slide is the section of the building code showing the Zero Carbon Step Code with opt-in emissions caps. In houses, the big difference would be by adopting emissions level 4 of the Zero Carbon Step Code, in all cases, you would need to electrify your space and hot water heating. Colwood is currently near the equivalent of emissions level 3, which requires space heating to be electric in all cases. And in most cases, you can still have a gas hot water system. With our planned move for larger Part 3 buildings this coming summer in 2024, these larger residential buildings will be required to have electric space heating and hot water in most cases due to their size and energy demand. So you would not see much of an impact with change there. The benefits to consider for adopting an emissions level prescribed by the Zero Carbon Step Code would be harmonizing with neighboring municipalities who have taken this path and more regional consistency. The Zero Carbon Step Code is a more simple and direct approach. So, touching on existing buildings and retrofits, it is important to note that the Zero Carbon Step Code only applies to new construction and does not apply to existing buildings. The city is developing a plan to approach existing buildings and retrofits to increase energy efficiency and reduce emissions. The province is also working on a retrofit code, which should provide municipalities with more guidance as well. Existing buildings contribute substantially to greenhouse gas emissions in BC. In the City of Colwood Climate Foundation's report, residential buildings alone accounted for 16,057 tons of CO2 in 2018. Using BC Stats data, there were an estimated 6,830 households in Colwood. A side note, the term household for the purpose of this estimate means a house, duplex, townhouse, or apartment. So that's an average of 2.35 tons of CO2 emissions per household. For Colwood to meet its target of being zero carbon for residential buildings by 2050, there would need to be roughly 263 existing households decarbonized each year to meet that goal. So for a bit of context, the graph in the slide shows the difference in emissions between 4 types of houses we see in Colwood of a similar size. You'll see that an older house can emit close to 6 tons of CO2 on its own every year, shown in orange. You can also see A comparison where Colwood is at now with the low carbon energy systems option, which is roughly near, again, the equivalent of EL3, shown in gray, compared to a house that meets zero carbon step code EL4, shown in light blue. So for context, in 2022, the city issued 71 building permits for single family dwellings, going from our current cap on emissions to an EL4 of the zero carbon step code would see an estimated reduction of 50 tons for the year in that example. And a comparison, retrofitting 71 houses in the year, that would see an estimated reduction of 426 tons of emissions in that year. So a lot of talk about renewable gas. So what is renewable gas? When organic waste decomposes, it releases biogas, a GHG containing carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. Before this biogas can escape as GHGs, it can be captured and purified to create what is referred to as renewable natural gas. There's been quite a bit of discussion around renewable natural gas and its application with the new carbon emission standards for buildings. Speaking to the province, they're exploring and possibly creating an energy modeling rule set, which would provide some clarity for energy advisors on how to model with renewable natural gas. As a reminder, energy advisors are the people who design buildings to meet energy zero carbon step code. This is uncertain at this point, though. As the province has stated, local governments adopting a zero carbon step code level aims at limiting greenhouse gases from the operating systems of a building, not energy sources for buildings. Staff feel this proposed move and the one we have currently still allows for flexibility in this developing technology and does not prevent its use. If there is a factor or credit to consider in future code changes with emissions calculated through an energy model, this change would not affect that potential factor. There was some concerns with, the Capital Regional District and its project being undermined, but we did confirm with the Capital Regional District that bylaws aiming to limit fossil fuel use in new buildings will not undermine the business case for the CRD's RNG project at Heartland Landfill. It will generate revenue for the CRD and not costs to taxpayers. So staff reached out to the community and industry for feedback on the zero carbon step code. Responses will be attached as appendices to the briefing that will be presented to council on December 11th. It seems for the most part, the building community is getting used to these changes. What this means for smaller buildings is that both space and hot water heating systems must be electric in new construction. And again, a change to EL4 from where we are currently would mean that hot water systems would need to be electric. There are mixed opinions on cost, and our research shows that any differences are negligible. What it comes down to is preference, and there are pros and cons to electric and gas water heaters. For example, an electric hot water tank may cost an additional $100 annually for average household for energy costs, which is about $8 a month, but it is cheaper to install than a gas on-demand system. A gas on-demand system may save space, but it also takes longer for the hot water to reach a fixture unless a recirculation system is also installed at an added cost. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with our planned move for larger Part 3 buildings this coming summer, these larger residential buildings will be required to have electric space heating and hot water in most cases anyway because of that demand. There is certainly an impact to the gas supplier and installers of these systems by making this change. Staff received 8 letters from gas installers who cited the same concerns as what Fortis has said. As far as capacity issues are concerned with electrical supply, we look forward to BC Hydro speaking at the council meeting on December 11th to discuss neighborhood readiness in terms of power capacity. So in conclusion, so through the BC provincial initiative, Clean BC, new buildings in BC will need to meet zero carbon step code emissions level 4 by 2030, if not adopted by local governments ahead of that time. Local governments have an opportunity now to directly cap emissions in new construction. It is difficult to generalize because of all the factors to consider, But there is a greater cost to making these changes down the road in larger buildings, which in some cases require a costly electrical service upgrade. New construction is considered by many to be the low-hanging fruit for change. That concludes my presentation this afternoon, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Byron. I would just make a real quick comment here, and that is that we're looking for some discussion here from you all, and that I think the council would obviously, we could have a recommendation come from this if you like, but I think what Byron mentioned earlier about comments in regards to the information we have in front of us is good. We have a cost of living issues that are out there right now with housing, and then of course we want to be able to improve our environmental situation. I think there's this balance that has to be made. But as time goes, my observation is that the cost of environmentally superior technology seems to bring costs down to the point where you can actually compare it favorably, but it's about the capital getting it getting it implemented. My other concern is on larger buildings, we lower the cost of building operations. If that's a rental, does that actually accrue to the tenant, or do the landlords simply raise the rent to make up the difference? You know what I'm getting at there. If you save on a business, if you save on the production side and you make your production more efficient, you have the option of keeping that profit for yourself rather than passing it on to the customer with a lower price. That's one of my concerns, and I think it only illustrates how complicated and tricky this whole subject can get. When I look at it from the environmental emissions perspective, it's kind of a quick answer for me personally. I've done some things at my home. I think I'm a retrofitted 80s home. It was actually built in 59. So a question I would have just to start this off maybe is about the housing stock in Colwood. There seems to be quite a few homes built in the 60s and 70s, which I'm assuming are less efficient than the home that's quoted here with the orange tower with this crazy high energy. Would you have a comment on that? Or maybe we don't have that data, but.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I think that was one of the worst case scenarios that we could find, because in that case, you have a house running completely off gas for their space heating, for their hot water, and assuming it's leaking like a sieve. So I imagine you'd see a pretty close number for a 60s house as well, depending on how the windows are sealed and things.
Yeah, and you see them with the single pane windows. There's not many of those left. Most people seem to have retrofit their windows. Yeah. And then also 2x4 construction. I know our house needed a lot of beefing up, and it wasn't cheap.
Yeah, and definitely through the chair, that was the worst case scenario. And then the rough estimate for how many households, just to give you an idea of what we're up against for that. So
it's quite striking. I didn't think it would be that wide. Anybody hit your button there, Karen? You can and then. So if you activate your light there, it's green, and then I have to do my thing here, and when it goes red, you're live. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Byron. I've heard you deliver many reports and talks in this room for going on 2 years, I think. And I want to say a little bit about why I feel we absolutely need to accelerate zero carbon step code. And then I have a question for you, because I believe we should go further. And first of all, I don't think it's as tricky nor as complicated as we make it. There is a provincial building energy code, which, as you say, municipalities have been given an opportunity to accelerate. And absolutely, we should take that opportunity. But I also feel the provincial government needs to accelerate its own actions if it's going to meet its climate targets. And clearly it isn't. Globally, we were trying to keep global warming, the temperature, to 1.5. I don't know if you heard the news at noon, but we're on track for 2. And we're only at 1.2 now. And we've got all kinds of weather events as a result of global warming. So I think it is definitely the low-hanging fruit. We should definitely go for it as fast as we can. We should I believe, align with others who have made the change. And I also recall Colwood signing on to the CRD Climate Initiative and several councillors saying, well, I don't know, $20,000, are we going to get bang for our buck? And I say, make sure you do. Go to the CRD Climate Initiative, ask them to help you arrange an accelerated timeline, perhaps in conjunction with other communities, because as you say, people are looking for regional consistency. So together with Langford and Highlands, we know that Victoria, Saanich, Esquimalt, View Royal have already gone down this road. So why not accelerate and make a group effort, as Victoria and Saanich did initially when they were the first to take this on. Lastly, I want to say about builders, I understand. So you're getting pushback from some in the industry, but there are many. There were 25 builders who signed a letter from the Pembina Institute saying, we want consistency. We don't want this hodgepodge of various regulations over the 138 municipalities in the province. And we're ready to go to zero step code. It costs no more, as your report showed. And so I wouldn't understand why we would not approve it as soon as we can to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And I'll end with the question for you of, can you give us a rough estimate of how much time you've spent on this topic over the last year and a half? Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Chair, if I may. Yeah, it's difficult to say. It's been off the side of my desk for the most part, but yeah, at least a few days. So it was definitely a council priority for us. So definitely keen to use that time.
You want to, okay, hold on, Karen. I'll let Karen speak once more here to this. And then I'll be going to Byron.
Thanks, David. And I'm really glad to hear it was a council priority. And my question was just to, when it comes to leadership, which I think is absolutely vital in addressing climate change, that's why I think we can go further and should go further. And if we multiplied staff time spent in every municipality who is working on this, the inefficiency of going municipality by municipality would become obvious. So I guess I really want to emphasize, I think Colwood Mayor and Council could show real climate leadership by perhaps getting together with neighboring municipalities to form a resolution for the AVICC. The deadline for that is February, and the resolution might be in the form of asking the province to accelerate its own timeline for zero carbon step code from 2030 to, let's say, 2025. Or it could be a resolution that asks the province to align with its own climate goals by ending further expansion of gas in the province, because we know natural gas is methane. It's not natural, correct?
Sounds right. So I think you probably know more about that topic than I do. But it's definitely through the chair, if I may. It's definitely a large discussion provincially. There's a lot of moving parts right now, and we're looking forward to those. We're always in close communication with our neighbors, have been for the last couple of years. That's really important to us. So before these standards were available to us. So thank you.
Thank you. Byron. Are you good with that, Karen? That's good. You're so far. Did you want to make any other comment about Karen's comments in general, or move it forward? Or we can just move on to our
Unless there was something I may have missed.
Yeah,
No,
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 it's all,
okay.
it's all good. Byron, would you like to, or Devin, sorry, Byron, why are you calling you that? Get you mixed up. Devin, please.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Scenic's presence at today's meeting. It seems like they're asking for EL4. I think I would be comfortable putting a motion from the Environment Committee if people are to support or endorse the EL4 action. So that would be my first point of business. About the Byron, thank you, Byron, for your talk. It was very insightful, and I appreciate the work you've done on this. Some of the things I think, as Karen was highlighting, is that we really do need some action now. And I feel like, as the graph showed, the real impacts that we can make on the climate emissions front is retrofitting older homes. And I feel like moving people along that pathwise or incentivizing them to get there would be great. I would like to see like a more prioritized approach where, maybe let's focus on the wood burning homes, because there's also health improvements to the community when we eliminate those off gases. And so I think it's a little bit more nuanced. And to speak to this nuance also is I didn't know about the luxury loads clause that was in his briefing note, which was well written, and I appreciate that. I don't know if that's a bylaw thing, but maybe the committee can see about, removing these luxury loads, because, in a time of crisis, I don't think we should be prioritizing luxury elements. And sorry, I'm going on a little bit of a rant here. And then my last, well, I have two more comments. My last point is about, gas versus electric. I feel like when we go into the gas environment, that we become beholden to the gas supplier, versus when we move towards an electric environment, the opportunity is for the buildings themselves to generate the electricity through solar panels and wind turbines and solar glass. There's lots of innovation in that sector. So I think in terms of gas versus electric, I would be a proponent for electric ecosystem. And then the last comment I can say is our cost of inaction is an opportunity cost. So the leaders of tomorrow will be the ones leading on the climate change today. So if we can harden our electrical grids to storms or other climate events, rather than focusing on one supplier, I think is the proper approach. And thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Devin. I didn't hear a specific question in there, but again, Byron, if you want to jump in on something, if there's anything you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, if you have a specific question, I'd be happy to answer it. I mean, when it comes to, I could touch on luxury loads. So, Amanda, are we able to bring up the slides again there? So I think that we're going to see some developments here. Oh, there we go. So I think we'll see some developments with this, as soon as the next code cycle. So actually right after this, we're going to a code update seminar in Vancouver, where hopefully we can get a bit more insight. But you can see the snippet from the building code itself there. So these are the standards that we have to go by. It's pretty hard to read at the bottom there, but it does say at this point, redundant or backup equipment for the systems and equipment listed in this are permitted to be excluded, provided it's equipped with controls and it's not required to meet the space conditioning of the house. So what that means is right now, things like gas stoves, unless you're dealing with residential, Part 3 buildings, those are counted to loads. But as far as part 9 goes, so you can see it says table 937. That's part 9 buildings right there. So right now, stoves are not captured in that, but we may see developments with that in the future. So we'll look forward to those, but right now this is what we have to work with. So it doesn't capture, it doesn't mean that gas is cut off to the buildings yet at this point with the L4.
Thank you, Brian.
Hey,
I
hey,
think
David.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just was going to be a little bit more specific since
Oh,
some of my
please.
stuff was a
Yeah,
little bit
okay.
lost.
Go ahead.
So I gather from the graph there that you're showing that new buildings are more efficient than retrofits. And I'm saying that does it make more sense to go after the retrofits or prioritizing retrofits? That's my first question. My second question would be, is there any prioritization to looking at wood burning facilities in terms of the health impacts that the emissions have on the community? And 3, where does solar panels fit into the program? And then I'll break on those 3. And David, I would like to see if we can do a motion to honor Scenic's endorsement from the committee. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And Byron, I'll give you a chance to respond. I'll just say first, I think that there's an opportunity to make that motion at some point here. Shall we, I think I'd like to carry on discussing openly like we are. So I've got you down for this motion and we'll get back to you then when it's time for that.
And apologies, I may not be able to recite all the questions there, but yeah, certainly you can see that, retrofits contribute substantially to greenhouse gas emissions, but they are considered the high hanging fruit. And so as I mentioned, the code is the province is looking at a retrofit code that hopefully guides us. And at the same time, we're going to be looking at our own to start looking at those. So, and when it comes to solar panels, I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that technology, in particular in new construction, because the BC Energy Step Code has a goal to meet net zero by 2032, which basically means that the building has to produce as much energy on site as it needs. So it's got to be really energy efficient. And yeah, that's where you'll see a lot of the change with those types of systems by that time. And sorry, would you mind repeating
the home heating one? Thanks for addressing the first 2. The home heating as getting prioritized for wood stoves and whatnot because of the health impacts.
When it comes to wood stoves, I know that was quite through the chair, that was quite a contentious topic provincially because, around here we don't deal with many power outages and things like that. I mean, in other parts of the province, they got a lot of flack for taking away wood burning stoves just in case the power went out in those remote areas. So as of now, there's no standardization for removing those. Where our hands are tied to a certain extent is the Building Act, the provincial legislation makes it so you can't require technical items from beyond the building code. So we can't say, no wood burning stoves with the Building Act in place right now. So you kind of have to follow those, as my understanding is the gist of that so far. I know that you can look at different modeling rule sets for backup or supplementary heating systems, which we'll look forward to doing. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, I'm just more. I get the whole building code thing, but I'm thinking more so like, say Colwood had money for 50 heat pumps. Could they prioritize those 50 rebates or whatever to homes that have wood burning stoves? That would be the queue or a prioritization kind of scheme.
Yeah, through the chair, we'll definitely be looking forward to having those discussions coming up with our retrofit strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Devin and Byron. Once again, Charlotte, thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Byron. Your presentation has helped me gain a better understanding of what's involved here. And I'm thinking that the Big Ideas Fair with the environmental theme might be an excellent opportunity to gather some information on what the public thinks and what the level of readiness is. So I'm wondering if we have a sense of what that is at this point, especially regarding retrofits, which seems to me would carry a cost to the homeowner. So I don't know what we know already about how the public feels.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That'd certainly be one of our first steps with that as well. So, yeah, and that ideas fair is a good place for it. So, yeah, yeah, we'll be looking forward to getting creative with how to make those changes. So, you know, certain stages make a lot more sense than others. So the sale of a house is a good opportunity because it's empty. You can focus a lot more on the air sealing of the house and renovation. So, yeah, looking forward to that high hanging fruit, so to speak. So.
Is that everything, Sean?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And Aaron, another chance here to go on.
Thank you. I want to really focus on, we've talked a lot about retrofits, and right now we're talking about, this meeting was called for a briefing of zero carbon step code. And I think the longer we wait to implement zero carbon, the more retrofitting we will have to do. We live in a home that has both an electric heat pump, which is fantastic, provides air conditioning in the summer, and also has gas appliances, which are known to be harmful to your health. So we're desperately wanting to make that retrofit. The first thing we did was add a heat pump to our suite for the comfort of our tenant. That was very expensive, more expensive than it needed to be because it was a retrofit on a 3-year-old house. And required reconfiguration of the electrical. So when we have the money, we'll eliminate the gas appliances. So again, just if this is the low hanging fruit, why would we turn it into the high hanging fruit and make it a part of the already large retrofit inventory and not just go ahead and decarbonize buildings as quickly as possible? Thank you.
Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it is safe to assume that, you know, if you're not going with that level now, it will turn into a retrofit later. So, yeah, safe to assume that. And like I say, it's difficult to generalize for all buildings, but that can be quite costly for a big building to do an electrical upgrade. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the debate here is the whole affordability cost of living thing, right? And we'd like anything that we can get more actual data and actual numbers about actual costs. When I hear Fortis tells me gas is cheaper and BC Hydro tells me hydro is cheaper in a building, I would just want to know what those numbers are. If people have to look at that and they have to include that into a mortgage, hypothetically, then what does that translate into? It is it 10,000, 20,000, 100,000? But I know what the builders are saying. We got some, information here. The UDI, they said, let's not do it. There's too much pressure, etc. And so there's a lot of conflicting different players. So the more information you can bring to it is great. And I do like the idea of the Ideas Fair, which also came, I think the committee, the whole environmental aspect was kind of encouraged by this committee to see if we can tie in that. And I think, wow, you could maybe find a way to gather that in terms of what people are willing to spend even. To be, all right, people able to spend 20,000, or is it that too much? If we had some lines would help. And sorry, Pamela, you're next. I cut you off because I hit your button earlier by mistake. So Pamela, you're next.
Just as everybody else has said, I'd like to thank you for the presentation and all this great information. I'd also like to, I don't know, second, third, fourth, everything that Karen has said. And my understanding, and again, just to delineate today, it's, there is no reason to not pass zero carbon step code or ask council to do that as soon as possible, because the retrofits are not a part of that. The other thing, with regarding the retrofit, I know on the climate action plan that was presented to us last time, I was looking for a lot more meat, as it were, in that. And the response I got, basically talking a little bit after the meeting, was that a plan is being worked on to address these issues, right? That there is sort of a plan to, I think, I'm assuming, because part of the cap was that 2 to 3% of buildings a year are retrofitted. So my understanding is that part of things, along with an idea fair too, would be great eventually, to do that too. But that's being worked on, and there are grants, I believe, and things like that. There are federal government grants that can go towards helping people to afford these things. So I guess that's all I wanted to add. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, through the chair, it's definitely a complex subject, retrofits, and we're looking forward to getting right into it, because you have to definitely strike a balance between, you don't want to cost someone who's already had a burden for their mortgage and everything. You want to be able to provide as much incentive as you can and help where we can as a local government. So it's also really important to us to look at buildings holistically as well. So not just swapping out a heating system. You should look at energy efficiency, or that might go through the roof, right? So it's really important to look at the building as a whole. There has been talk in the past about radon gas, for example, and in a new house, it has a ground seal with poly, and we're confident that there's we're meeting code and it's okay there. But say, for example, if you made an older house airtight, well, you really have to start looking at that ground seal now, because you do want to make sure that there isn't soil gases being trapped in there, and that ventilation also meets new code to be able to add that fresh air and exhaust it. So it's definitely want to look at it as a whole and not piecemeal, for sure. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. And did you want to add anything now, or since you're still red?
No,
You're
no,
good?
I think
Yeah,
I'm
great.
good.
Okay, thanks. And Karen, you're up again, please. Oh, sorry, something didn't go. There you are. Sorry, you're on now, Karen.
So David and I both sat in on a webinar this morning that says that heat pumps and renewable energy is far and away the more affordable option. That's just from a cost point of view. If we're looking at this from a global warming point of view, we simply cannot afford to increase our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to dramatically reduce them if we're to have a hope of, surviving on this planet. So I don't know that government needs to ask people if they're willing to spend whatever they're willing to spend. I'm not even sure I understand that question, because when the decision is made to go to zero carbon, the cost of the house will be no more. Maybe when it comes to retrofits, you ask people how much they want to spend, or you just increase the rebates. Those rebates, there's a lot of money. If we stop subsidizing fossil fuels, there would be a lot of money for making energy efficiency more affordable. So I really think there's a role for government. And I think, as Devin said, I'm not understanding why we are beholden to a fossil fuel industry when we have a renewable Crown Corporation and BC Hydro. And I recall Ted Olenek and Jim St. Onge in this room, the former mayor, asked, why are we putting in natural gas infrastructure if we've got BC Hydro as the renewable green alternative. And Ted Olenick's response was, penny wise, pound foolish. In other words, we'll pay for it down the road. So let's stop putting off these costs to the future and start implementing our climate plan today and encourage others to do so, including our own provincial government. Thank you.
Chair, if I may comment. Yeah, and again, we're looking forward to a lively discussion with BC Hydro and Fortis in the room on December 11th. So stay tuned.
Yeah, that could be good. And I think we could all be out in force, Karen, perhaps in a different chair, but from the same perspective, I like some of the ideas that have come forward here. If anybody else wants to speak, please let me know. I think that we could move this together into some kind of a little collective ball of ideas, and then discuss the motion that Devon is speaking of. I wanted to ask you though, Byron, quickly, that there seems to be a couple of new independent individual homeowners who've built what looks to me like something that is, if it's not, it's awfully close to passive house in Colwood. And do we have that in any kind of an inventory? Can we go and talk to those people and outline a systematic kind of a form, I guess it would be, of what it costs them kind of from the design stage right through to occupancy permit, and how much I know it's not going to be from the building perspective necessarily. There's a house on Tipton, there's one on Milburn, the rectangular house on halfway down Milburn, that I watched them build it. It's a different kind of house for sure, and I'm sure that they're targeting passive. Then there was also something else I had in my mind. I just wondered if we couldn't get some kind of baseline understanding of what it looked and even felt like, if these people be willing to allow some of us to take a look at their homes and get a picture in our mind of how presumably permitting, you folks in the permitting side of the staff would have and inspections would have been aware of what went on in those places. I'm just curious if you have any comments that way.
Yes, certainly. If the committee wanted to recommend adding, what the cost impact would be for a passive house standard to council, then we could bring that. I know they're limited. They're sort of the Tesla, so to speak, of the house industry. But yeah, we could certainly add that if committee wanted to recommend that to council.
Well, that'd be great. And even Teslas are coming down in price in the US now. They're the same price as a Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, I was looking right at you when I said that.
I know that's the US, but Canada, usually we follow behind anywhere from 6 months to 16 years on such things. But I had the idea myself that I could talk to these homeowners and just, it's almost like a testimonial kind of a presentation. You can create these little scenarios of what people have lived through. We did a retrofit in our house, like I mentioned earlier, and I'd be more than happy to go through some of that. We had an energy audit done, et cetera, and we had grant money came in, we got a check, and it was significant. This is what, 10, 11 years ago now. So I'm just wondering, the more information and the actual dollar amounts, the actual data, our mayor, he's asking for this. The more information, that way you can get the actual information, cold hard facts, the better, just to help make those decisions moving forward. I think this committee has expressed its interest quite clearly in terms of this motion idea. Ian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to comment on the idea of learning from others in the community that have done retrofit. So Colwood staff are working with the CRD to help identify homes in Colwood that could be part of their climate friendly housing tour that they're facilitating later this year next. So we're actively trying to recruit folks. If you know anyone, send them our way.
That's exciting. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that if I can, Chair.
Yes.
It's important to note that some houses are voluntarily meeting step 5 of the energy step code because of their air tightness targets. south of Latoria for Part 9 buildings this year, they're voluntarily meeting EL4 of the zero carbon step code. So their space and hot water heating is electric. So it does seem that the industry is making that shift on its own in some cases. So
That's very helpful. I know for my case in our house, I can't tell you what it would cost for a comparable new house, any of that, but I can tell you what my hydro bill is and what my water bill is for an entire year and how many adults live there, how many electric cars I drive, how many kilometers I drive. There's a lot of information available that I know myself, and I think I've spoken to others. If there's some way to get these people to kind of put forward that information, and then we can kind of flesh some better numbers onto this discussion about affordability. It seems to me as fuel prices rise, even without the philosophical notion of in climate change and that urgency, which is all really quite clearly important. If we could put some dollars on it, we might find out because we don't know for sure that putting in some of these changes might actually save us money and indeed not be so expensive. Perhaps the help some of these folks need is more of a funding stream, there's a low interest interest-free loan right now. I think it's CRD for heat pumps or something. I'm sorry, I've forgotten off the top of my head what it is, but there is a program out there right now. And those are the kind of programs that I think maybe Devon, you were talking about it. Anyway, I'll shut up now because we have better people wanting to speak. Pamela, are you next? You are, right? Please.
Just to add to that, I mean, if you're looking for, quantification of things too, but, to quantify how much is it costing us for inaction? How much are the wildfires costing us? How much health medical costs are added to, there. So, I mean, I know that there's obviously been some research done and quantification done, but that would be good to include as well if you're doing something like that. The other, I think, 2 points, the city where I used to live back in the US did have green home tours. So they did have people walking through the homes, and it was a really successful program. So just to add to that, I think that's a great idea too.
Yeah, right on. I think Solar Colwood, we did that program where we did house tours. I'd sit out front with my electric car. People go touring through the houses and talking about the electric car. That went on. That was back in 2010, 12, 14 in there somewhere.
Oh, actually, sorry. One other thing too,
Yeah, please.
is, there are places that people, they are companies. They are unfortunately they're not nonprofit, but they will come in and help municipalities fund grants to give to people to make the retrofits happen. So if Colwood was amenable to hiring one of these entities to do that.
I think it's the
Might be
lower
something to
this
look into.
region's best kept secrets that Colwood knows how to write grants applications. We've had some great success, done very well with different areas. A lot of it is around the environment and such things. So I think we can.
And Chair, if I may just touch on one of your
Please.
points there, what we can do for the next briefing that we bring to council on December 11th is we have definitely access to in-depth studies. I mean, what this change would mean again is from EL3, which we're basically at right now, to EL4, and we can definitely provide a cost study on what it would mean going from a gas hot water system to an electric one. There's a lot of information we can bombard you with there.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think I'm going to go to Devon, Karen, if you don't mind. I think his hand goes up. Devon, do you want to jump in here?
Thanks, David. I was just gonna echo your point about the loan program. Those loan programs are incredibly successful, and they really just emphasize that proper solutions pay for themselves. So there's a rate of return there. So whether it's solar panels, heat pumps, batteries, wind generators, all those are easy wins in my mind because they pay for themselves. They're not, coming up with new schemes and regulations and policies and procedures to get stuff done. It's let's fund these programs and let's start making headway on it. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Just wanted to second my opinion on your point there, David.
Yeah, thank you very much, Devin. And maybe Byron, did you want to? No, it's okay. I just thought maybe I was trying to give you the opportunity to speak. But Devin, we'll come back to you then about that motion in a minute here. I've got Karen is on the line. Why does your, because I pushed your, there we go. And then Pamela's came on.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
I want to go back to Pamela's point about the cost of inaction. It's higher than we can accept. And I think, as Devin says, if any renewable energy pays for itself, we can explore opportunities with the federal government, you know, through the province, obviously, but about they just implemented a heat pump program for Atlantic Canada. They've said they are interested in talking to other provinces. Let's talk to them. Let's get all the rebates, incentives we can. We used to have a program called Solar Colwood, which has vanished. We used to be a model ICLEI pilot project for climate leadership. That too has vanished. So if we're really serious about climate leadership, I think we have to be strong, courageous, not worry so much about pushback from the development community. They know how to earn money. I recall a Colwood citizen standing right where you're standing, Byron, saying he had a developer friend who said, you know, we're the wolves and you're the sheep and your council is the shepherd standing between us. So I'll end my comments with the role of government is to protect public interest. And I think it's incumbent upon every municipal government today to take every action they can to accelerate climate solutions and protect the public interest by doing that. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else like to come? Well, Byron, why don't we, or Devin, sorry, I keep calling you Byron. Why don't you work with Amanda here? We'll put this motion out. Did you catch a sense of it earlier?
I did take the motion from Scenic because I think someone here mentioned that that was the one that.
Yeah, does that sound right, Devin? The one.
Yeah,
that
I'd like
was-
to put forward Scenic's motion. I am agree to their EL4
I'll bring it
ambition.
up.
Yeah, so Amanda will put it up on the screen for all of us to take a look at. Make sure we know what we're looking at. And then we can get a seconder and talk about it a bit. I did leave the motion till later because I wanted to get as much out about this whole thing initially. So I'll read it, I guess, shall I? Yeah, that the Environment Committee recommend to Council that the adoption of the zero carbon step code be expedited for both Part 9 and Part 3 buildings at Step 4, zero carbon performance. For all new buildings on the following schedule: 1, all Part 9 residential buildings, November 1st, 2023. 2, all Part 3 buildings. A, multi-unit residential buildings, 6 stories or fewer, July 1st, 2024. B, multi-unit residential buildings, 7 or more stories, November 1st, 2024. C, all other eligible Part 3 buildings, commercial, November 1st, 2024. Do we have a seconder? Pamela?
Chair, if I may.
Yeah, yeah.
November 1st has passed.
That's how it was. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't really catch that myself. Yeah, I think it would have to be. No, we won't be talking until maybe January 1st, 2024. I think the idea and intent is that it's immediate, and that would make it pretty as close to immediate as we're able to do, I think. We do have a seconder, Pamela. Correct? The mover is Devon. Devin. I always pronounce his name both ways, just in case. B and C, November 1st, 2024. Yep.
Chair, if I may, I believe that is what our neighbors have planned for that type of building at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those 2 dates, okay? Yeah, okay. Anyway, so, okay, second or so comments and discussion I have for Charlotte, please.
Can we just clarify what part 9 is?
That's probably the easiest question that I'll have all day. It's a building that's 3 stories or less, under 600 square meters in gross floor area, and certain occupancy types that exclude like assembly occupancies. So it captures, you know, houses, townhouses, and smaller multifamily buildings.
Thank you.
And Karen,
Is it possible to add a further recommendation or add to this recommendation?
will be amendment. You're asking for an amendment, is that right, Amanda? Yeah, it would keep it cleaner, I think. Shall we do it that way? Okay, well, I guess if we'd like to wait on that, we'll get back to you right after this and we'll call the question. And all those in favor? Opposed? And Devon, you're in favor. You made the motion, making that assumption. Yep, and passed. So that's unanimous action. Okay, Karen, then would you like to make your secondary motion or another motion?
And before I do that, can I ask you, Byron, I believe you said this would be the fastest possible recommendation.
That would ultimately be up to council, obviously, to set that date. But if the committee recommended January 1st, 2024, it sounds realistic. I'd have to see meeting dates because it would be December 11th would be when we'd bring this briefing to. I don't know if we'd have bylaw readings in time for that.
It would be more like February 1st because we'd have 2 meetings in January where you could give readings.
Right.
And adoption. So it needs to go to at least 2 meetings.
So for first, second, and third, and then adoption, right? So it'd be December 11th, then meeting, then meeting.
So we should have done that. with
We,
the original
you
motion.
know, for what it's worth, we could come back with what we could figure out what that
Yeah,
date would
right,
be.
of course, yeah. And so back to then Karen's question.
So sounds like, yes, this is the best possible recommendation to make to have zero carbon implemented as early as possible.
We will relay to council that the committee's desire is to put it in place as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's
Thank
the
you.
urgency of it is part of the,
Could I further recommend
Hmm.
that the Citizens Environment Advisory Committee suggest that Colwood Mayor and Council work with neighboring municipalities through the CRD Climate Initiative to encourage the BC government to accelerate the climate solutions listed in the Clean BC Action Plan.
I'll let the committee.
yeah.
This is
so
a
I'll need
motion, I
some-
imagine, so.
I would need some help on that because I'm not sure it's the purview of this committee to discuss the council's relationship with the CRD or how we go about encourage them to work with others. I'm not sure how that works. I guess we could pass a motion. It's just a recommendation. And they can laugh at it if they want to. And they can certainly, the intent is there then, right? Which is, I think, again, part of that urgency, right? We have a motion then. Is that what you've done up there for us?
So I'm thinking that it should be from the committee because,
Yeah.
yeah, not from Scenic because you're the one recommending.
It's from the committee.
Yeah, no, well, it's, yeah, see, I'm not sure. Are we even allowed to do this? Byron, do you know?
I don't want to crush any dreams. I do know that they have set a tentative timeline. You know, whether they are willing to accelerate that tentative timeline that I had up on the screen or not, that'd definitely be a big conversation, but I'll let the committee decide if they want to follow through with this motion.
Yeah, I think that for me, the implication of urgency and working with in every way possible toward this goal is embedded in the initial motion and is also in the intent which staff has picked up on here today. And typically there's a follow through with that intent that's even outside the motion itself, right? So we're not directing staff here anyway. We're trying to advise to council. So we want council. I think what Karen is trying to, maybe I shouldn't speak for Karen, but I think what we're trying to say is, what Karen is trying to put through is this notion of working on a broader scale. Now, the project that's going on with CRD right now, the discussions rather, can you just explain a bit more what's going on there?
I don't have much more detail than what I explained. So essentially they are doing a you know, a carbon capture renewable natural gas project at Heartland landfill. We did receive a bit of flack from the industry saying that that would undermine it in some way, but we did confirm directly from CRD that that is not the case. So that's the most information I have at this time.
Yeah, because that's another whole bag of tricks, isn't it? Discussing the type of energy and gas and the biogas and its validity, because the province has got its initiatives going. I'm just trying to get a bottom. Amanda, do you have any advice to help me out here a little bit? In terms of,
I don't understand who the citizens.
no, it's just the environment committee.
Oh, I see.
Yes. No, I don't know what I don't even know what the full name is.
So the way we would word it is that the Environment Committee recommend to council that council work with neighboring municipalities through the CRD Climate Initiative to encourage the BC government to accelerate the Clean BC initiative. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay, just hang on a second. Can you put on your mic?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Just hit, yeah, we go. Okay, let's do that again. Sorry. Oh, I didn't take it. There we go. We're on.
The Environment Committee recommends or suggests that council work with neighboring municipalities through the CRD Climate Initiative to encourage the BC government to accelerate the climate solutions outlined in the Clean BC plan.
We have a motion before us. The council work with neighboring municipalities through the CRD climate, that this committee, environment committee, recommend to council that they work with neighboring municipalities through the CRD climate initiative to encourage the BC government to accelerate the climate solutions outlined in the Clean BC plan. Do we have a seconder? Pamela? And anybody want to comment on this motion we have before us here? No comments? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Corley is opposed. Devin is in favor, I believe. In favor?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm
thank
in
you.
favor.
Okay. Okay, that's passed. I've lost my.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, okay, Byron, thank you very much. Sorry, it came to a kind of anticlimactic air out of the balloon at the end there, trying to organize. I find the whole concept of writing motions completely baffling, and I'm always in awe of the corporate folks that are able to do that so well, capture the intent. Anyway, I guess we could call for adjournment here at this point. No one else. Oh, sorry, not yet. Too soon. Karen.
Obviously, lots to say on this topic, and this will be the last. And we've talked about the environment ideas fair, which I think is awesome, and I do hope it goes ahead. And in conjunction with that, I hope we also have a panel discussion where we can at least agree on a baseline of scientific evidence for the need for climate solutions, so that it's not an opinion where people think, I don't go with this climate scam, or, I'm not, I think I think what we really need is agreement that there's a problem, it's an emergency, and it needs to be addressed by all of us. So I really support the idea of an environment ideas fair. And I also really support the idea of a panel who will give us some baseline scientific evidence and give people an opportunity to have their questions answered. That's it, David. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Karen. I think, I'd encourage you too to put together a quick letter to, I think, actually Sandra Russell Communications would be part of that, putting that together. Am I right about that, Ian? To think that Communications has working on that ideas fair?
Yes, based on the recommendation of the committee that went to council, is now direction to staff will be incorporating that as part of the creation of the communications plan and implementation plan for the climate action plan.
Yeah, so that makes sense for her to send that a letter like that through to Sandra, just some ideas she might have to be helpful.
Yes,
Basis.
either
Does that
myself or
sound fair,
Sandra. It's certainly it's in the works, and I can highlight for Sandra the comments that were made.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much for doing that. Just so everybody gets it right, like Ian will talk to Sandra in the background. This sort of thing happens a lot here at City Hall, and I'm learning that myself. And I'm only saying it because this committee has got lots of difficult issues going on, but the staff hear it and they discuss things in the background. I was quite surprised. I walk through the door and I bump into somebody and they start talking about something that I was going to ask them about, and they're already on it and moved forward. So it does happen more often than not. At least I find that personally encouraging. I don't know if that helps anyone. I think it's very difficult, and I find emotionally heavy to carry the environmental issues that we're faced with along day to day. I find City Hall a hopeful place on this front, believe it or not. Okay, anything else? Adjournment. You need a motion, right? I can't just declare it closed. Yeah, everybody ready to close off the meeting? Adjourn? I see no shaking heads. Meeting is closed. Thank you all very much for coming. That's wonderful.